Come be a part of Doc Holliday's Rock-Splitting Politics with your host, Dr. Ed Holliday. Hear the voices of liberty speaking all across America. Doc Holliday provides thought-provoking interviews and commentary about the issues and actions that are afflicting this country and what we need to do to get America back on track. Get fired up, get inspired, get on board with Doc Holliday's Rock-Splitting Politics right now.
And here we go.
Well, that's the sound of rock cracking right here, 2019. We're in the middle of January, going toward the end of January. And what has happened week after week, rock-splitting politics. And I'm your host, Dr. Ed Holliday. You're listening to us right here on webtalkradio.net. And this is Doc Holliday's Rock-Splitting Politics. And wow, last week had some fireworks. We thought there were a few little fireworks with the Bill Barr Attorney General confirmation hearings in the U.S. Senate. But that was just pebbles from what happened toward the end of the week. And we just have to look at this. We know there's over 800,000 federal workers. I have some kinfolks that are federal workers who are not getting a paycheck now, and friends in the same boat. And I know many of you do too around the country. So what needs to be done? Well, the president last Saturday set out some negotiating. The Democrats want to negotiate, so he gave an announcement from the White House last Saturday about what he would do and how we could get the government moving again. The Democrats seem not to bite on that. So where are we? We're in an impasse. But before we got there, what happened? Well, Speaker Pelosi, she went on the air and said that President Trump should consider postponing the State of the Union address, or maybe just put it in writing and send it over, which is constitutional, could be done by the U.S. Constitution. But she knows good and well that the main thing is she does not want to give President Trump the audience of a State of the Union address. I mean, that is unprecedented. That is unprecedented, but she has so much bitterness and hate toward President Trump. She doesn't want to work with him, and she doesn't want him to speak. Now, isn't that what we've talked about in the shows in the past, how the liberals, they don't want to hear another side. It's these radical leftists who they want to just shut down any kind of talk that they don't want to hear, and so she just wants to shut Donald Trump down. And the mainstream media was praising Speaker Pelosi. Oh, how she just shut Trump down! What a smart woman she was, and she just was going to have her way with this president of the United States now that she's Speaker of the House. And against all odds, what happened the next day? Well, Speaker Pelosi was supposed to go to Afghanistan and Brussels and probably Egypt and check with allies, and she had some of her Democrat cohorts in the House that were going to go with her. And guess what? They were all ready to go over to Andrews Air Force Base on a special bus, congressional bus, and then the word came out that President Trump did not sign off for them to use military aircraft. He sent a nice letter saying they could fly commercial. And that is one thing you have to give President Donald Trump. When can you remember any president in our lifetimes, any president since aircraft's been flying, who would ground the Speaker of the House? Who would do that? But Donald Trump did it. And does it seem childish? A lot of people say it seems childish. But was it childish when Nancy Pelosi said, hey, you ought to think about postponing the State of the Union address when there's 800,000 workers who are not getting a paycheck? Well, that's why Donald Trump just turned the table and said, well, you shouldn't since 800,000 people aren't getting their paychecks, maybe you shouldn't be out of the country because you're the person we got to negotiate with. So, wow. I said with Donald Trump in the White House, you don't know what to expect. You don't know what may happen. And we just have seen that this week. So we're at an impasse. What are we going to do? Well, that's today's show. We're going to talk about what would Ben Franklin do. He did something when there was an impasse during the U.S. Constitution convention. So we're going to look in that in today's show and hopefully show how this nation needs to respond, the citizens need to respond, and our leaders need to respond. This is Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics, and we have got a roadmap for success to get federal workers back to the job and getting their paychecks, and so we can move forward and get the wall, get protection on the southern border. There's a lot of ideas out there, but nobody's talked about this one. So listen to this week's Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics. Before we get to that, let me just remind you that in 2019, what do we have to look forward to? And I told you some shows we're going to try to do everything from immigration to how to end racism immediately. And still working on those shows, and we have got some special things coming up. Everything, we're going to be hitting everything from cryptocurrency and taxes and just some blockchain technologies like we had last year, so several shows on that. So a lot of upcoming things that you're just not going to hear in the mainstream media, but you're going to hear it right here on Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics. So keep listening to us next week. And just wanted to get all that in. Bill Barr, let me just say, the Attorney General confirmation hearings. I thought he did an outstanding job. And there's some people on the Trump side think, oh, maybe we don't know, we need to have somebody that's a good friend with Bob Mueller. Hey, he's the perfect guy to be the Attorney General. And I'm telling you, Bill Barr has got respect, and if any Democrat doesn't vote for him, it's because of politics, because they want to run for president. And he's talking about running for president. I mean, it's popping like popcorn. It's like the popcorn popper's going, and every day it seems like somebody's popped the kernel saying, I'm running for president, or exploring an exploratory committee. And it's really amazing. It would be something if some of these younger Congress people in the House that Democrats that want to run, and then you got Joe Biden that's pushing 80 and thinking about running for president. So what does all that mean? Well, that means that it's going to be a interesting race to see what happens with the Democrats. Who are the Democrats going to get behind? It's going to be pushed further to the left. It looks like it will be. Wow. We're going to have some shows on that later as things start to materialize. But let me just say that the Democratic Party right now is playing this shutdown in a way that's more political. They don't care for the 800,000 federal workers. They try to blame it all on Bush. But I think with his outreach on Saturday, the shoe is going to the other foot. He's ready to negotiate. He's got some good items. He says, let's get this country moving forward. And the Democrats are not budging. So that gets us to what we need to hear. We'll take a listen to this first. And that was Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles. Do you think the sunshine's coming? It's been snowy and cold across most of the United States. It's been soggy and wet down in Mississippi where we're doing the show out of Tupelo, Mississippi. Soggy, wet, and a little bit cold too. And sometimes we wonder, when are we going to see the sun? As I know the federal workers who are on furlough right now are thinking, when are we going to see the paycheck? Well, here comes the sun from the Beatles. We would like to see sunshine with our politicians working together. And if they don't work together, if they think their ideal are the highway, and you don't get things done. And then the people go, well, we need a dictator, we need a monarchy, we need something because we cannot self-govern ourselves. Well, we can self-govern. We've proved it for over 200 years now, way over 200 years, and we got a new Speaker of the House that does not seem to want to work with the other elected leaders. She thinks she's Queen Pelosi, and we don't have monarchies here in the United States. So Queen Pelosi, I think it's time to get on board. But let's take a listen, like I said, to what was said in the United States Constitutional Convention in 1788. There we go. Another 100 years back. But that you can go to watch. There's a website called Wallbuilders. Now, isn't that interesting? There's a website called Wallbuilders that has the information we need today. And I'll try to get a link there. Look on our web page and get the link. But it's called Wallbuilders. .org, I believe, but it's wallbuilders.com. You can go there, but they got this quote from Benjamin Franklin. There was an impasse in all the delegates, and it was a secret. It wasn't out in the papers because they knew they had to get a new form of government. The Articles of Confederation were not working, so they were meeting in secret, but the delegates were fighting. They couldn't seem to get things done. And then they were at an impasse, and it's almost like some delegates are ready to go home, and that's when Benjamin Franklin got up. And let me just read what was said by Benjamin Franklin. We have arrived, Mr. President, at a very momentous and interesting crisis in our deliberations. Hitherto, our views have been as harmonious and our progress as great as could reasonably have been expected. But now an unlooked for and formidable obstacle is thrown in our way, which threatens to arrest our course, and if not skillfully removed, to render all our fond hopes of a constitution abortive. It is, however, to be feared that the members of this convention are not in a temper at this moment to approach the subject in which we differ. In this spirit, I would therefore propose, Mr. President, that without proceeding further in this business at this time, the convention shall adjourn for 3 days, in order to let the present ferment pass off, and to afford time for a more full, free, dispassionate investigation of the subject. And I would earnestly recommend to the members of this convention that they spend the time of this recess not in associating with their own party and devising new arguments to fortify themselves in their old opinions, but that they mix with members of opposite sentiments, lend a patient ear to their reasonings, and candidly allow them all the weight to which they may be entitled. And when we assemble again, I hope it will be with a determination to form a constitution, if not such one as we can individually and in all respects approve, yet the best which under existing circumstances can be obtained. Before I sit down, Mr. President, I will suggest another matter, and this is the part. I'm going to stop reading just a minute, and let me remind you, this is the part that Ben Franklin really, it may be the reason we are a country today and not broken in all different pieces, because this Constitution was approved not long after this. And let me continue reading. And in Benjamin Franklin, in the Constitutional Convention, remember, he was in his 80s at this point. He was old and well respected, but he was more feeble. And people listened to him. He didn't say a lot, but when he talked, people listened to him. And he said this after he said that first paragraph. And they were said that the countenance of Washington brightened. You remember, Washington was the chairman of the convention, listening to everything, letting people speak. And then it said Washington's countenance brightened, and a cheering ray seemed to break in upon the gloom which had recently covered the political horizon. But Benjamin Franklin continued. He said, quote, "Before I sit down, Mr. President, I will suggest another matter, and I am really surprised that it has not been proposed by some other member at an earlier period of our deliberations. I will suggest, Mr. President, that propriety of nominating and appointing, before we separate, a chaplain to this convention, whose duty it shall be uniformly to assemble with us and introduce the business of each day by an address to the Creator of the universe and the Governor of all nations, beseeching him to preside in our council, enlighten our minds with a portion of heavenly wisdom, influence our hearts with a love of truth and justice, and crown our labors with complete and abundant success." So that is, that Benjamin Franklin was saying we need prayer and we need a chaplain, and those are the things that helped get the U.S. Constitution back, the convention back into focus, and we got a U.S. Constitution. And right now it seems like our country is at an impasse. And what do? Well, just what Benjamin Franklin said. I think they need to take a couple of days apart, and then we need to be praying and get some chaplains up there. We need chaplains. They got a Senate chaplain, a House chaplain. Get them together and let's have some joint prayer time and talk with people of the opposite party what their constituents want, and let's get together, just like Benjamin Franklin got everybody together. So we're going to talk about what the president said last Saturday in the second half of the show. Let me just remind you, you're listening to Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics. You're listening to us right here on webtalkradio.net. You can go to the website, www.Doc Holliday, that's Holiday of 2 L's.org. Go there, you can order the book, Bedrock Truths. That's written by Dr. Ed Holliday, Dr. Alveda King, and Dr. Alex McFarland. And this week we're celebrating the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and Alveda King is his niece, and she does a wonderful job. She speaks a lot of times on Fox and different networks, and is just a wonderful, wonderful person. I know they had a March for Life in Washington, D.C. Last week, and again, she is very much in the pro-life movement, to give life to children in the womb, the new civil rights frontiers, what she calls it. And I just want to tell you that as listeners to Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics, I am proud you're listening. And if you don't have the book, Bedrock Truths, please go ahead and order that book right off the website. Get your friend one. And let me remind you also that this book, Bedrock Truths, gives us looks at the foundation this country is founded on. And they're fast eroding. And even if Donald Trump being elected president, it gives us hope. But, I mean, they're still being, the foundations this country is founded on are being undermined every day. The progressive left, they want to tear everything up, tear everything down. They think they can tear it down and renew, but it never happens that way. In socialism movements and communism movements, they destroy and the whole society falls. Look at Venezuela. Look at Cuba. We don't have to look too far. So when somebody starts talking about all this socialism, if it's Bernie Sanders or one of the young socialists, it just tell them to go to Venezuela, live there for a year, see how they really like socialism. There's so much we have to guard to keep our foundation strong, and that's what we're doing right here on Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics. But let's get started. What happens when we are at an impasse? I told you what Benjamin Franklin did at the Constitutional Convention. What can we do now? I do believe in prayer. I do believe in talking to the other side. Nancy Pelosi is the one that says she won't move. Chuck Schumer won't move. I'm hoping by the time you're listening to this that cooler heads in the Democratic Party go, let's get to talking. Let's negotiate. And that's what President Trump is working on, to negotiate. But you see, that's what the Constitutional Convention helped produce when Ben Franklin said we're at an impasse. People had to compromise, and the press, every time that if the Republicans seem to be shutting things down, or if the Republicans, when Barack Obama was president, they kept talking about we need bipartisanship, we need people to be bipartisan. They just plugged it. Now, when President Trump is in office, they're not talking about bipartisanship. They're talking about how strong Nancy Pelosi is, how strong this Speaker of the House is. Where's all that talk from the mainstream media about bipartisanship, working together? Where is that? Where is that push? Well, it's just goes to show you how biased the mainstream media is. We've talked about it here many times. You can see many representations of that. And they are out to get rid of President Donald Trump. The mainstream media is just, I hate to say it, but they are a part of the Democratic Party, and that's just the way it is, folks. It shouldn't be that way, but they have just been nothing but a two arms of the Democratic Party. It's not even just one arm. I believe it's two arms. You got the Democratic moderates, and you got the socialist leftists, and they're all part of the arm of the mainstream media, it appears to be. And it doesn't take you long to listen to another news show, any news show on the mainstream media, to realize they are bitter and hate. They're full of bitter and hatred and toward the President of the United States, and it shows by their reporting. They just go overboard. They go off the cuff. And you hear it, the anger in their voice. You can see their eyes get beady and pointed, and it's just like that bitterness is making their whole life sour. And they blame it on Trump instead of saying, this is America, and this is where the people voted, and they voted for Donald Trump. And in 4 years don't like it, they get a chance again. But no, they have never given this president a time of day. They've been trying to get rid of him since after the election of 2016. But where we go from here is trying to look for anybody who will talk level-headed, who will talk common sense in both parties, and see if they come up with a solution with President Trump and negotiate. And look at what Ben Franklin did, follow the leadership of our founding fathers, and especially Ben Franklin, and just see what wonders it can happen when you do what Ben Franklin did after the Constitutional Convention. And that's Doc Holliday's take on it. Now, I want to play you a clip as the beginning of President Trump's speech last Saturday, and to say how he's willing to compromise, and this is how he's negotiating. So take a listen to President Trump from the White House.
Just a short time ago, I had the honor of presiding over the swearing in of 5 new great American citizens. It was a beautiful ceremony and a moving reminder of our nation's proud history of welcoming illegal immigrants from all over the world into our national family. I told them that the beauty and majesty of citizenship is that it draws no distinctions of race or class or faith or gender or background. All Americans, whether first generation or 10th generation, are bound together in love and loyalty, friendship and affection. We are all equal. We are one team and one people, proudly saluting one great American flag. We believe in a safe and lawful system of immigration, one that upholds our laws, our traditions, and our most cherished values. Unfortunately, our immigration system has been badly broken for a very long time. Over the decades, many presidents and many lawmakers have come and gone, and no real progress has been made on immigration. We are now living with the consequences, and they are tragic, brought about by decades of political stalemate, partisan gridlock, and national neglect. There is a humanitarian and security crisis on our southern border that requires urgent action. Thousands of children are being exploited by ruthless coyotes and vicious cartels and gangs. 1 in 3 women is sexually assaulted on the dangerous journey north. In fact, many loving mothers give their young daughters birth control pills for the long journey up to the United States because they know they may be raped or sexually accosted or assaulted. Nearly 50 migrants a day are being referred for urgent medical care. Vast quantities of lethal narcotics are flooding through our border and into our communities, including meth, cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl. Drugs kill 78,000 Americans a year and cost our society in excess of $700 billion. Heroin alone kills 300 Americans a week, 90% of which comes across our southern border. We can stop heroin. Illegal immigration reduces wages and strains public services. The lack of border control provides a gateway, a very wide and open gateway, for criminals and gang members to enter the United States, including the criminal aliens who murdered a brave California police officer only a day after Christmas. I've gotten to know and love angel moms, dads, and family who lost loved ones to people illegally in our country. I want this to end. It's got to end now. These are not talking points. These are the heartbreaking realities that are hurting innocent, precious human beings every single day on both sides of the border.
That's President Trump, and he's telling the Democrats he's willing to negotiate, and if the shutdown continues, it's in the Democrats' hands. President Trump is willing to negotiate. He's willing to compromise. It's time for Speaker Pelosi and Chuck Schumer to come to the table. It's time for people to start saying, get to the table, and let's get this country moving. It's okay to compromise if the country is stalled. You know, holding out a position like Nancy Pelosi, not $1 or maybe $1, nothing more for the while. She is being the stubborn person who's keeping federal workers from getting their paychecks. Mainstream media can't hold cover much longer for her. That's the way Doc Holliday sees it. Email me, let me know what you think, and we will see you next week. Hopefully this impasse for the federal workers will be over. May not. But we'll talk about rock splitting politics again next week. Thank you for listening to Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics.
Thanks for joining us today, and remember to listen again next week for another edition of Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics. You can order Ed's new book, Bedrock Truths, by clicking on the book cover right in front of you on the screen, or visit DocHolliday.org. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.